Welcome to another message from Columbus First Assembly. Thanks for listening as we strive to learn and live the Word and ways of God. Our hope is that you're encouraged by today's message.
The slide here says there is two types of people. People who like whales and people who don't. Just kidding. That's not the two types of people. There are two types of people. There are introverts and extroverts. Introverts and extroverts. And I actually talked to my brother Donovan. He actually does not believe that these exist. He doesn't think that these are a concept. But I think there's a tier system to it. There's introverts that are so introvert to the max where they can just sit in their house and read a book and watch TV and not deal with another single human being in their life, and they'll totally be okay. There is introverts who, they like to be with people, but they don't want to be in the middle of a bunch of people speaking. If they were up here in front of everybody, they'd be freaking out because that's not what they do. There's extroverts that like to do their own thing. They like to be with people, but sometimes they just want to get away. I'm a little bit of that, but I'm a little more of the extrovert that needs to be with somebody every single moment. You just got to be with people. When you're not with people, you feel like you're not doing anything. It's just like, oh, I wish I was with people. Now, the title of my sermon is For Such a Time as This. For such a time as this. So we got that slide? For such a time as this. Okay, so through the pandemic, through the whatever has been going on through the quarantine, it's been interesting watching the different types of people and the way that they've been dealing with it. Introvert people, they're like, oh, I can stay home and I don't have to talk to people and it's going to be great. And then over a while, they're like, okay, this is getting old. For me, personally, the moment when I found out I couldn't have youth group or couldn't have church service, I was so bummed and I was anxious. I was like, darn it, I can't spend my time with my kids, with my church. I can't do anything. I can't go to McDonald's and have a Coke from McDonald's that is so delicious. And we couldn't do social things. So I was distraught when March came by. And I was thinking, okay, if I'm going to be in quarantine, I can, stay home and sleep in and play video games. But no, I had to come to the office from 8:30 to 5:30 every day, and I'm like, shoot, so I got to do that part, but I can't see people, and I learned some things. I learned about operating a camera and video editing and all of that stuff, and I did not ask to learn all of this stuff, but I was having to anyways, and it was just really, really difficult, and there was actually 1 week where I recorded Pastor Rick preach, and he didn't prefer that sermon, so I had to record him do it again, and that was okay. And then I had to edit his sermon, edit some things out, and then I had to watch the entire sermon over again, so that's 3 times watching. And then the next Sunday, I had to sit behind a camera and watch him preach that same sermon. And, I mean, Pastor Rick is not an ugly person by any means. In fact, he might be a little attractive. Pastor Rick, if you're watching, hello. It's just the next week, I didn't want to look at his face because I've been seeing it so much on camera, recording it just like on the camera. I did not like it, and I wanted to jump out of my skin. That was an adjustment that I had to make. And just like many of you, you may just feel like, I wish we could just skip 2020. Skip it. This is not good. There are things that are happening in quarantine, stuff that have been frustrating, inconvenient. They changed the Taco Bell menu. Black Panther just passed away, which is so sad. All of us superhero fans, we are bummed out right now, and it's not good. In fact, there are a couple pictures that I want to show you of what 2020 has been like. So this is a review of 2020, would not recommend. Go ahead to the next one. My plans, 2020. For you Office fans, there's a good one. Okay, the next one. Oh, yes, a nice cup of 2020. All right, next one. January 1st, 2020. June 9th, 2020. I feel that. And then the next one. It's just a prank, bro. Camera's right there. I love his face. The little kid smiling like, oh, no wonder. Like, that's good. I love that one. All right. So things have happened during this year, and things have been frustrating. In fact, there's words that I might say like COVID or mask or quarantine or new normal. And I could put all different kinds of things on this list that you're just like, I am tired of hearing that. Amen. This year has been frustrating. We can all agree that it's not been the best. And we'd be happy to say, okay, let's just skip this year, go to 2021, never talk about it again. Things are going to be okay. Things have been uncomfortable. Things have been frustrating. We've had to work hard and we had to adjust and pivot. And some of us who don't like change had to change really quickly. Some of us feel completely defeated and feel like we're knocked out. We're out for the count. And now we have to keep going and we don't really have much energy left. You parents or you students that are trying to go back to school, or you education teachers and people on facility, it has been a hard season. Trying to adjust and get your family to do the right things. And in fact, you may have made a decision this year, or things may have happened to you that it might have been your fault. You just made a little decision and the world around you seemed to just fall out of place. Just skip this year. But the title of my sermon is For Such a Time as This. And that actually comes from the book of Esther. So I want to tell you guys the story of Esther. So there was a king. His name was King Xerxes. I'm just going to call him the king because I'm tired of saying Xerxes already. He was a king and he got drunk one day. And so he was just flaunting around, just hanging out, doing what drunks do. And he was telling everybody about his wife. And he's like, you guys need to see my wife. She's the most beautiful woman in the country. She's the most beautiful woman in the world. And his wife was like, nope, I'm not going to show these people who I am. He wanted her to stand up and spin around and show everybody. She's like, I'm not going to do that. And so he did the logical thing. He divorced her. He divorced her. She's not going to do what he wants, and then he's going to divorce her. But the next day he wakes up, and he's a little more sober, and he's like, well, now I've got a whole new issue. I'm without a wife. So he does the next logical thing, and he holds an entire pageant in the kingdom. And so he has women come up and come through, and he says, okay, that woman is beautiful. This woman is beautiful. This woman is beautiful. But then Esther comes by, and he says, cancel the pageant. This is my new wife. She didn't really have a say in the matter, and she became his wife. King Xerxes also had an advisor, and he was the best advisor of them all. He held him in higher esteem than all of them, and his name was Haman. Now Haman, he had this decree, because he was the best advisor of them all, that everybody would kneel to him. But there was also another gentleman named Mordecai, and he was a Jew. And Jews don't kneel to anybody other than God. And so as Haman is telling everybody to kneel to him, Mordecai is refusing to kneel, so Haman hated him. Hated him. In fact, the king started gifting Mordecai with things because he was so faithful. God was blessing him, and the king was giving him more and more stuff, and Haman hated him even more because of it, so Haman had a plot. He was going to kill the Jews. He went to the king and he said, King, there are these people who are rebellious, who are going against our customs, going against our decrees, and I think the best option would be for us to kill the Jews. The king was like, yeah, that makes sense. We should kill them. There's a lot of people always trying to kill Jews. It's not cool. So Haman is going to try to kill the Jews, but Mordecai was the cousin of Esther. Esther was a Jew. And so he knew about the situation. He heard about it. He knew that they were planning to persecute and kill the Jews. So Mordecai went to Esther. And he pleaded with her, please save us. Please say something to the king. Esther wasn't allowed to go to the king's court and just say, hey, they're trying to kill our people. You shouldn't do this. But he was asking her to do it anyways. In Esther 4:14, if you guys can turn in your Bibles there, it says, for if you remain silent at this time, relief and deliverance for the Jews will rise from another place. But you and your family and your father's family will perish. Now, I just kind of want to stop there because there's a little bit of a misconception about God's will in our lives. He says if you remain silent, deliverance will come anyways. And there are things that God has called us to do, called us to be in our lives, and if we fail to do that, God will choose someone else. If we fail to do what God has asked us to do, but fail to be that person, God will pass over us, pass over the call that he has on our lives, and give it to someone else. And so we could be like, oh God, I don't know if I should answer this call, but I don't want to miss on the blessings that God has for me and the call that he has for me and for him to give it to someone else. God has called me. But you and your father's family will perish. And who knows, but that you have come to your royal position for such a time as this. You have come here. This is the moment. This is the reason why you were brought here at this exact time, was for such a time as this. Some of you Goonies fans might say, down here, it's our time. It's our time down here. Some of you Dead Poet Society say, seize the day, carpe diem. Some of you may not know either of those, which is really sad because they're both fantastic movies. But you will get this last reference, Avengers Assemble. Take advantage of the time that you have right now. Even though it was against the law, even though Esther knew the repercussions that might happen, she might be killed for what she was going to do, she told the king. The king killed Haman, and she saved all of the Jews. God called us to be here at this time. Some of us in the conversations that I have with you, you are convinced that we're living in the last days. Some of us are convinced that the world is going to shambles, and if you look around, look at the news, it's going pretty crazy. Some of us see the lives that we have and we're wondering, why is this stuff happening here? And I want to say to you, what an honor for God to pick us as his advocates. In a time when the world has been going so crazy, at the time when God is preparing to come back, at the time when everything seems out of control, he needs people to stand firm in their relationship with Christ and say, I love Jesus and I will love you. God chose us for such a time as this. Now, some of you may be thinking, God may have chosen me for this time, but you don't know my story. You don't know the stuff that I do when I leave this place. You don't know the past that I have. You don't know how incapable I am to do those things. God doesn't have a call for me. Do you know who I am? I don't have anything to give. Why would God ever use me to do ministry, to affect people's lives, to be his advocate? And I want to tell you guys of a character. His name is Paul. You may not know, before Paul was the apostle that God called him to be, he was a killer of Christians. He walked around killing Christians and persecuted them, the starting church, and God actually showed up to him while he was on his way to kill some more Christians. And he said, I'm going to call you to be my apostle. And so Paul is having this conversation with God in 2 Corinthians chapter 12, and he's pleading with God. He has this weakness. He has this inadequacy, this thing about them that just doesn't add up. He can't do what God needs him to do if he has this. And some of you may feel that. Some of you may name a certain thing that you have that's not enough. I can't do that because I've got this problem. In 2 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 9, it says, well, God first said to Paul, my grace is sufficient for you. My grace is sufficient for you. He says, therefore, I will boast all the more gladly about my weaknesses, so that Christ's power may rest on me. That is why, for Christ's sake, I delight in weaknesses, in insults, in hardships, in persecutions, in difficulties, for when I am weak, then I am strong. So some of us see the inadequacies that we have and the things that we are struggling with, the problems, the world around us that's going crazy. Nothing seems to match up, and that is the exact moment where God says, okay, because get ready, because I'm going to do something really, really cool. The moments when we feel weak, God's like, okay, you feel weak, that means I am strong and I'm going to take care of everything else. In June, and my family knows a lot of this, and my story is, I went to this college called ALC, and it was a really, really cool school. They trained ministry people. They trained people to have a solid foundation in Christ, and it was awesome. There was amazing people running it who we really looked up to, and in June, the director of the school had a moral failing. And it was such a moral failing that the entire school shut down. And if you know my life, I've had this story multiple times, and it is kind of getting old. But what was most disheartening was seeing the past students that went through it. Instead of coming around saying, it's okay, God is faithful, God is here, God is going to be okay, they say, you have hurt us. And they came around and they attacked the entire school, attacked the whole foundation of the school. In fact, students were leaving their whole relationship with Christ. And it broke my heart. And I was done. I was beat up. I was dealing with COVID. I was dealing with everything. And I didn't know what God was planning to do. So I would like for you guys to watch this video.
In the back.
Excuse me. How you doing? Glad you come by.
Can I talk with you?
Sure.
Can you do it outside? So you're going through with this?
Yeah, I start training tomorrow.
Hey, Rob, I made some connections. I can make some money on this endorsements.
Absolutely, do that.
Thank you, Rob.
Sure.
Okay.
So you nervous about the fight?
They're scared to death.
You don't look scared?
Well, you ain't supposed to.
Then you don't have to do it.
Yeah, well, I think I do.
You know, living with you, it hasn't been easy. People see me, but they think of you. Now with all this going on, this is going to be worse than ever.
It don't have to be.
No, sure it does.
Why? You got a lot going on, kid.
Well, my last name? That's the reason I got a decent job. That's the reason why people deal with me in the first place. Now I start to get a little ahead. I start to get a little something for myself. And this happens. Now I'm asking you as a favor not to go through with this, okay? This is only going to end up bad for you, and it's going to end up bad for me.
You think I'm hurting you?
Yeah, in a way you are.
It's the last thing I ever wanted to do.
I know that's not what you want to do, but that's just the way that it is. Don't you care what people think? Doesn't it bother you that people are making you out to be a joke and that I'm going to be included in that? Do you think that's right? Do you?
You ain't gonna believe this. But you used to fit right here. I'd hold you up and say to your mother, this kid's gonna be the best kid in the world. This kid's gonna be somebody better than anybody ever knew. And you grew up good and wonderful. It was great just watching you every day. It was like a privilege. Then the time come for you to be your own man and take on the world, and you did. But somewhere along the line, you changed. You stopped being you. You let people stick a finger in your face and tell you you're no good. And when things got hard, you started looking for something to blame, like a big shadow. Let me tell you something you already know. The world ain't all sunshine and rainbows. It's a very mean and nasty place, and I don't care how tough you are, it will beat you to your knees and keep you there permanently if you let it. You, me, or nobody is gonna hit as hard as life. But it ain't about how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. How much you can take and keep moving forward. That's how winning is done. Now, if you know what you're worth, now go out and get what you're worth. But you gotta be willing to take the hits and not pointing fingers saying you ain't where you wanna be because of him or her or anybody. Cowards do that, and that ain't you. You're better than that. I'm always gonna love you no matter what. No matter what happens. You're my son, you're my blood. You're the best thing in my life. But until you start believing in yourself, you ain't gonna have a life. Don't forget to visit your mother.
So a little context to that video is that was Rocky Balboa, and he was an older age, and a man said, I can take you in a fight. If you were at your prime, I could have taken you out, and he decided to go into this fight. So that was his son. He was dealing with a frustration because he saw everybody just looked at him and was like, oh, your name's Balboa. You must be Rocky's son. It was just constantly in his way, and he just talked about life was going to give you hits. And it will. And I wrote this quote, and this is my main key point, is Christianity is not about enduring hardships, but fighting through them and finding purpose from them. It's not about enduring, but it's fighting through the different obstacles that we are having in our life. I was texting a youth pastor at the beginning of quarantine. I said, I feel like I'm wasting my time here as a youth pastor. And he said, this, Evan, might be the most pivotal time for you to be the youth pastor. I was talking with Chad Bierman, and I was talking about how we were praying for Brian Graves, the youth pastor that is dealing with terminal cancer. And I was like, what do you think about this? How are you dealing with this? And he lit up. He said, he's going to be healed. I don't know if you're super knowledgeable about Chad Bierman or know him super much, but he is a very quiet person. But as soon as I asked him about the situation, he lit up, and Mallory Dinner can advocate for this. He was like, God is going to do something. I feel the Spirit of God. Every time I talk about it, God is going to do something miraculous in that man. I saw that faith. I was talking to Jacqueline Miller about Blue Tassel Farm. I said, how are you guys dealing with this situation with everything going on? She's like, man, so many people have canceled on Blue Tassel Farm, and sometimes we are worried about how God is going to make it through, but we have figured it out, and we have chosen to use this time to utilize the times that we are free, and we are making it a better place. God's going to take care of it. I was talking with Pastor Rick. We were at Kings Island in line for the Orion. And I got super nauseous at this Kings Island trip, and this man goes, like, he rides roller coasters like crazy, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, I can't walk, I need to. But we were in line, and we were talking about when I was 19, I wanted to be this director of youth ministries at this church, and he's like, you were 19, man, like, how would you expect that? And I was just thinking, I don't know, I was confident and cocky, and I thought I could take on the world. And he was like, man, you were kind of that way when you started here. And I was like, oh, goodness. He said, but over time, you've taken some hits, and you've lost a little bit of that confidence. But then he said to me, but I believe in you. You've been doing the work diligently. And sooner or later, you're going to get that confidence again. Sometimes all you need to hear is someone say that they believe in you. Sometimes all you need to hear is God say, I believe in you. Sometimes someone in your life needs you to say to them, I believe in you. The lady who ran my school, she had these different retreats for youth pastors, and she had all kinds of quotes, and her name is Jeannie Mayo. You may have heard of her. But she had this one quote after her husband passed away from a stroke. She said, make hell pay. The devil's going to attack us. We have to on our back. If we are choosing to be advocates for Christ, they are going to go after us more than anything. The world is so different than the mindsets that we should have, and it's going to get hard. We're going to take hits, but no matter what, I'm going to hit harder, and I'm going to make hell pay. Make hell pay. Isaiah 40:29 says this, and worship team, if you guys could come on up. It says, he gives strength to the weary and increases the power of the weak. Some of us, you're probably looking at me and seeing my situation thinking, I've dealt with so much harder things in my life and through this year, and I know, I'm a weakling. I'm doing what I can, I'm growing, I'll probably take even harder hits in the future, but man, some of us are weary. Some of us are weak. We say, God, give me the strength. And there's another quote from Winnie the Pooh. It says, you are braver than you believe, stronger than you seem, and smarter than you think. God believes that. And no matter what hits you take this year or through your life, make hell pay. Because he picked you for such a time as this. Now, I don't know if you believe in God in here, and if you don't know him yet, maybe you've been trying to get through on your own power and tried to will your way through, but I'll be honest with you, it's not enough. If I was doing this job on my own power, I would not be able to handle it. If you're trying to follow Christ, raise a Christian family in your life, you can't do it by your own power, and I say you can rely on the power of God. And so if you guys could close your eyes with me. Jesus, you have died for us. God, so that we can have a relationship with you. God, we do not need to rely on our own power. And God, you have picked us for this time. And God, we have been so frustrated. We've been wanting to skip it. Just get rid of it at this time. But God, you have chosen us to be here. God, use me. God, give me ideas. Give me motivation. Give me the strength to do the things that I know you have called me to do. And God, there are some people in this room who are choosing to follow you now because they realize that they can't do it on their own strength. God, we bless you.
You've been listening to a message from Columbus First Assembly. We hope that you've been encouraged in your spiritual journey. If you are not part of a local church and would like to attend one of our regular services, our church is located at the corner of 10th and Iowa Street in Columbus, Indiana. Our Sunday morning worship services start at 10 a.m. and our Wednesday evening studies begin at 7 p.m. And while you're online, check out our website at columbusfirstassembly.org for details and information about our church. You will also find other messages and series that you can listen to or download. Thanks for spending some time with us and for taking advantage of this resource from Columbus First Assembly, where we strive to learn and live the Word and ways of God.